I'm fascinated by your perspective and also the perspective I'm seeing from some other sports gamblers who are sounding a societal alarm. Because when I think about sports gamblers, I don't think about the most touchy-feely, empathetic people. They're a little bit hard-edged, and that is including and especially Haralabos Voulgaris, who professional NBA gambler who worked for the Dallas Mavericks. Haralabos, I'm using his nickname. He's got a hard edge. He's got a sarcasm. He's caustic, but he puts out this alarm right here. I'm going to read it if you don't mind. Legalized sports betting as it currently stands will devastate America in a similar fashion to the opioid epidemic. At a bare minimum, I'd recommend these changes. 1, limit ads. Sports betting ads should be restricted, especially those targeting youth whose decision-making isn't fully developed. 2, no credit cards. Ban credit card deposits to prevent gambling with money people don't have. 3, protect vulnerable bettors. Prevent sites from exploiting problem gamblers or VIPs with higher custom limits while simultaneously banning or restricting professionals or winning gamblers. As someone that made a living betting on sports in mostly unregulated, quote, outlaw markets, these are my personal views. I can see how it may come across as hypocritical to some, but thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Curious what changes, if any, others would make, ? This is a perspective. We can get into any specifics you might agree with or disagree with there, but I'll just throw that out to you. What's up with people from behind the curtain coming out to warn everybody? What's going on with that?
So I almost want to address, he says it sounds a little bit hypocritical, which I personally disagree with, but I could see how the attack, and I think that tweets specific comments where professional gambler doesn't want anyone else to bet. But being in the weeds, he understands how tiny the margins are in winning, how strong the book's house edges are, how the advertisements target, the most vulnerable and susceptible people to, having an addiction. So I think he actually has unbelievable perspective on it, and he's probably one of the best NBA bettors, if not the best NBA bettor ever. But to address the advertisements, that's my biggest problem. I'm super pro gambling, super pro the legalization. I'm just extremely wary of the inability to watch any sporting event here in New York City without being bombarded after the first quarter, after the first timeout. You get the halftime lines, you get the third quarter. I mean, I have the live updates of the entire FanDuel market regarding that game and oftentimes other games while watching whatever, the Knicks or the Yankees. And I just think that we're not at the point in time right now where there's any lobbying for anti-gambling or anything of this can be a societal nightmare. I think there's some statistics like bankruptcy rates in legalized states are up. And just given how, like he said, the youth sees it, and all the biggest influencers are all sponsored by, the sports books. And then all the sports podcasts and the content is sponsored by the sports books. So you almost feel, if I'm not betting, am I left out?
And it's almost the opposite. I mean, it's not the opposite as far as if I'm not betting, am I left out of societal practice? But the feeling that these companies try to stoke that you're going to miss out on winning a bunch of money, it is the opposite, because as we have talked about on this podcast, and still a lot of people don't know this, Eric. A lot of people are surprised when I talk to them and I go, they don't let you win. And people go, really? I go, yeah. They start noticing that you're winning, they cut you off with algorithmic efficiency and you can't put bets down. And that's how this all works. Could you lend a little bit more substance to what I'm saying there about how they make it seem like, oh my God, you can win this or that, but they effectively ensure that it is absolutely impossible to come away with a big winning. I know people would say that's how casinos are, but you can I don't know. You can have a great night at a casino in a way that I think is a little more difficult to do big scale in sports gambling.
Exactly. So that's one of the biggest problems. I'm going to get to that in a second, but I'm most frustrated by all of these sports gambling accounts like PR betting and ESPN bets and anything sponsored by the sports books. They want to sell you on the lowest possible ROI for you, which seems like an unbelievable bet, which are these long shot parlays. And what you do in these parlays is you stack bets on top of each other. And what seems to be a great payout, I bet a little bit like a lottery ticket to win a ton. I don't think the general public understands that the house's edge is multiplied when you keep stacking these bets.
Yeah.
And an average that the houses hold, or how much money they're making per bet on a straight bet, is maybe 5, 6, 7%. And on a parlay, when you're combining 6, 7, 8 bets in one, is closer to 30, 40%. So all of these accounts are showing, oh, this guy, look at this guy, he cooked on this parlay. You know, he won 540,000 on this $60 bet. This could be you. And the books are licking their chops, you know, posting all of this, because I think it gives the rush of, oh, I could bet a little and be rich and win a ton. But effectively, not only should that parlay mathematically pay you way more than they're actually paying you, but their edge is so strong on that they love when you win, because it creates an advertisement in itself that we could post this. This guy's super happy. He won the $5 to win 200,000. And we want that action. That is the most profitable action on our end as DraftKings or FanDuel, right? So they're pumping essentially the worst possible bet you could make on the homepage, on Twitter, Instagram, any advertisement, right? So that's my biggest problem. That's one of my biggest problems is the parlay game. And you go on their homepage, and last night in Monday Night Football, it has Shannon Sharp's face on there with the Club Shay Shay parlay, and there was one that was called, like, I think DraftKings had it's like a shake and bake with Baker Mayfield, a few of his props combined with the Bucks winning. And then I looked at the bet, I expanded it, and it didn't even have any prices attached to the bet. It just had, plus 1,200 at the bottom, but it just read Bucks money line and Baker Mayfield passing yards 250. But Bucks money line should have a price attached to it, right? Whether it's I don't know what it was last night, plus 130, but you don't know if they're giving you plus 105. You don't even know if they're skewing the odds. They could be a favorite in that bet. So the lack of price sensitivity in the first place is what's killing the recreational bettor. But then they advertise you these parlays that you don't even really know what the prices you're betting. You're just like, oh, and under it has 2,000 people place this bet. So it's almost like building a community. So I think
that's an interesting aspect. Well, right. I didn't think about the building a community part. Sorry to interrupt, but that's something that didn't even occur to me as part of what gets you in. I mean, some of the strategies and ways they try to get people involved in it, very interesting and a little bit dark. And I want to make something clear. I'm not anti-gambling either, just like Eric's not anti-gambling. I actually like sports gambling, especially from an intellectual perspective of trying to find the market inefficiency. And done the way it has traditionally been done, I look at it a little bit like blackjack, where the house has an edge, but it's not a massive edge. And if you're with your buddies at a bachelor party in Las Vegas, it's fun to put some bets down at the sports book on a few games. That's fun to me. I like that. I think it's cool. We're talking about something else that's happened at a scale that's new, and I do think is preying on a hole in human psychology to a degree. I'm not sure what the mathematical principle is, but combined probability in the mind just doesn't feel as unlikely as it is. It just doesn't. 2 free throws for a 50% free throw shooter hitting both consecutively is 25%, but it doesn't feel that way necessarily. Perhaps that's not the best example, but you know the principle I'm getting at. And you effectively create a scenario where it becomes like the slot machines, where the edge is so much it's just so tilted to the house, but it doesn't feel that way. And you've got all these people chasing this payout that's never going to come with these crazy parlays. And that is the growth engine for these businesses. That's why they're pushing the parlays. That's why if you watch these gambling ads, it's parlay, 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 because the stuff I like, the stuff that's a little bit more like blackjack, the hey, who's going to win? What's the spread? That traditional thing, that doesn't pay the bills. It's this other thing that seems to be what's paying the bills, and that means soaking the consumer.
Absolutely. They don't. You never see a bunch of straight bets being advertised. You don't see Dodgers game one or Dodgers first five. They want you to see the lotto tickets. But going back to buddies at a bachelor party, and how that could be a good thing and build some camaraderie. The difference is with the legalization, it's in your bed. It's when you wake up, it's at work. And with the 24/7 markets of betting, it could be 1 p.m. East Coast, and I have Ukrainian ping pong to bet on live. And I could bet on European basketball, and tennis is year round. They have like a 6-week break. It's played all around the world. And so I could pretty much bet on a tennis match every day of the year. So it never stops. And once you're a little bit hooked, I think it's extremely, extremely difficult to stop. And I've, heard and experienced many stories of something has to come to a halt, whether it's your wife finding out that you have a problem because you need to show her your financial statements because you're buying a house. Whether it's I actually can't make rent anymore. I've tanked my savings. And the way that, the gambling addiction, I think, and I know it's a sensitive addictions. I'm not too familiar with a bunch of them. But it is a sensitive topic, but you don't go from 100 to 91 or 100 to 83 and then stop and realize, oh, wow, that was an issue. The $100 goes to zero or very, very close to zero. And then what we've talked about is an interesting point. When you do lose, if I'm going home from work every day and watching the Warriors, and my bets predominantly are comprised of the Warriors spread or something to do with any derivative of that game, and I keep losing money, does my interest in the sports team dwindle? Do I have the same care for Kuminga's relationship with Steve Kerr? Do I have the same care for, Moses Moody's contract and all the intricacies that I once was a big fan of? I've watched, pretend scenario, but I've watched the Warriors for 4 or 5 months this year. It's now February. I keep losing betting on them, and it's enough. I can't afford to lose anymore. Is your recreational fandom going to continue? I think that's an interesting point that is seldomly brought up. And I think it would be hard to have money on a game for 5 straight months, realize your bankroll or net worth, was chopped in whatever. And then we're going to go back to watching the games with no money on it, with no rush, with nothing attached to it except pure fandom. It's hard to believe.